Hi, this is the Brothers Chambers Show. I'm Natalie, and today we're going to be making red beans and rice New Orleans style. To start everything off, let's go over some basic knife skills that I think are pretty important when you're cutting up the veggies for the sofrito, which is, or the holy trinity of vegetables that's really important in New Orleans cooking. It's onion, bell pepper, celery. So, let's get started. The way that I've always learned how to cut an onion from the time I started in restaurant kitchens was as follows. Cut off the top, cut off the bottom, and you cut it in half, straight down the middle. Okay. You take all of this, you take off your papery skin, and I usually take off the first layer of onion just because it's usually drier than the rest anyways. So you get that going. And then you're going to make some horizontal cuts going all along up to the top. So depending on how big or small you want the chop to be, that's going to determine how your spacing is on these lines. So I want this to be kind of a smallish dice. So I'm going to try to make these lines, I don't know, maybe like a 1/2 inch in between, something like that, 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch. So just go all the way up, and you want to keep your fingers out of the way of the knife at all times. So if you're cutting like this, you have your fingers at the top. You don't want your hands on the sides. Anywhere where they might touch the blade is not good. So next we're going to do some vertical cuts, the same way, spacing them 1/2 inch apart, just going across. When I learned how to cut an onion this way, it literally changed my life. Okay, so now all you have to do is cut down, and you have your little pieces. That's it. You're just going to go all the way across, all the way down to the tip. And then when I get to the end, it's usually not cut quite as evenly, and so you kind of will get bigger pieces. So what I like to do usually is I just lay it down flat, and then I cut them, you know, I don't know, sort of like this, whatever I feel like doing. But I don't like to waste the butt of it, so you just cut it, and then depending on how big your dice is, then you just cut it to conform to that. And next, we will conquer the green bell pepper. Okay. So the way I usually cut green bell peppers, I used to hate cutting bell peppers just because the way that it's shaped is really, it's just not conducive to making super even cuts. So I usually chop off the top of it, and then you see the inside with the pith and the seeds and everything. So I just kind of take my hand and grab it and scoop it out, throw it in the sink or the trash can, whatever. I pick out some of that white pith because that's not really the most flavorful part, and I think that the pith can even make it a little bitter sometimes. So I try to remove some of that and just leave the green. And then I'll cut it in half down the middle. And to make it more even, I usually will cut off the bottom parts like that, so that when I'm cutting it into strips, it's easier. Otherwise, you'll have these rounded edges that make it very irritating to cut. So you've got these little strips, and then I usually just go down and I'll cut them, you know, for these I'm going to make them probably about the same size as the onion, about a 1/2 inch or so. It's kind of a smallish dice. So you're going to go down and cut them like that, line them up in a row, and then you'll just go down and cut them. So basically, so you're going to do that with the whole thing. And it's definitely easier if you have like a longer bell pepper so that these aren't quite so short. But in any event, this is a fairly quick and straightforward way to to cut your red bell pepper, to dice it rather. Slice and dice the green bell pepper. Not terribly time consuming. The key with anything in the kitchen or anything in life is just the more you do it, obviously, the more quickly you can accomplish it in the future. So I've cut a lot of bell peppers over time and a lot of onions and a lot of other vegetables, but every single time I actually have the moment to reflect on my knife work while I'm cutting, I think of the original chef that I worked for, Travis Lott, at this restaurant, Jelena, in Venice, California. And he, when I first started out, would make me cut so many vegetables into a brunoise, which is a really small dice. And it was like torture for me because I wasn't experienced with my knife, and it was torture. But now I'm really happy that he made me cut all those things because I feel like my knife skills have really come a long way since I first started cooking in college. So, thank you, Travis. I'm going to cut off the butt of it just to make it a little even. You can either toss these, compost them, or you can use these to make stock. If you want to be really efficient and frugal, then you can save all these cuttings from the vegetables and use it in a stock, which is very helpful. Instead of having to put fresh, good pieces of, all your vegetables, you can just use the scraps to make stock. All right. So with these, I just end up cutting it, into a few pieces down the length. And then each of those pieces in turn do the same sort of deal. Just cutting it into strips roughly about the same width. And then you just go and go at it. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Celery under the knife blade. I love celery. I don't eat enough celery. I wish that I ate more. I need to make it a point. Whether it's cooked or raw, celery is so good for you because it's a really powerful diuretic. So that's really helpful to just cleanse your body and detoxify it. I feel like in this day and age, we don't do enough detoxifying, and there are definitely a lot of toxins that are circulating around us, especially in a hustling, bustling place like New York City. So eating any sort of vegetables that are diuretics really helps to facilitate the detoxification process in your body. Oh, another thing that I forgot to mention, but which is really crucial, a sharp knife is potentially the most important piece of equipment in the kitchen, other than, of course, a stove, in my opinion, or a pot or pan, because without a sharp knife, not only does cooking take forever, but it's not enjoyable. I have a theory, and I think that the reason that the vast majority of people don't cook regularly or they don't like cooking is because they've been working with dull knives. Because if you try to cut vegetables with a dull knife, you're going to be very frustrated, and 3 hours later you're going to have some weird looking vegetables that, just not that great. So always have a sharp knife. And I mean, it doesn't have to be an expensive one. It can be an inexpensive knife. They sell lots of them at different, home goods stores and things like that. Or even if you go to a cook's, a specialty cook store, you can find knives easily for under $50 or even under $30 that do a really great job. And they last as long as I think it's also definitely worth it to, go to a knife sharpening workshop or ask the people when you buy your knife to teach you how to keep it honed, because when you can do that on your own, it really saves a lot of money. The main reason that people like to buy more expensive knives is that they hold their edge much longer. But if you have an inexpensive knife, most of them are very sharp, but they just have to be maintained more than their more expensive counterparts. So, sharp knife is the way to go. That's what helped me cut up all these veggies in no time at all. All right. Now that the veggies are done, we can cut up our sausage, have that ready to roll. For our red beans and rice, we have some andouille sausage, and we're just going to cut, into discs. Knives are also handy for opening packages. So many uses. So we got our sausage. I'm just going to take the sausage and just cut it up real nice like. It's it's nice to have access to andouille sausage for this recipe. I mean, you could substitute any kind of sausage, really. I mean, probably not breakfast sausage, but if you wanted to do like kielbasa or something like that, I'm sure you certainly could, but it would just change the flavor a little bit because, you know, the special thing about andouille sausage is that it's simultaneously smoky and spicy, and it's got all these great flavors going on, so it really, really adds a lot to so many New Orleans dishes. Et voila. All right, got our sausage ready to go. Put it in a bowl. And then, next, in the grand tradition of Haitian cooking, I will be crushing garlic in the mortar and pestle, or piler the garlic in the pilon. That's what Haitians say. Piler that garlic. All right, so I got those things ready to go. I'm gonna wash my hands because they're all sausagey. Hi, this is the Brothers Chambers Show, and today we're making New Orleans red beans and rice. So we've already got all of our vegetables and our sausage cut up. Now we're gonna make our way over to the couch to piler the garlic in our Haitian pilon, and get it ready to get cooking. So we'll sit here next to our friend Whitney and crush the garlic up. Just resurrected that album the other day. Hadn't listened to it in a while, and I was really happy that I did. It's just classic Whitney at her best. All at Once, How Will I Know, The Greatest Love of All. Man, this album's awesome. I'm really gonna get in there and crush this garlic. Red beans and rice, here we come. So another way that Haitians are tied into this dish, interestingly, is in the kidney beans. Kidney beans are traditionally used for red beans and rice, and they were brought to New Orleans by Haitian slaves who escaped, you know, during the Revolution or after. And they came to New Orleans and they brought kidney beans with them. So thank you, Haiti. And again, I just like to mash this until it's fairly fine. It doesn't have to be, you know, perfectly paste-like, but the more you crush garlic up, the more you mince it up, you're releasing more of this substance called allicin, A-L-L-I-C-I-N, which is responsible for its healing properties, its flavor, its pungency. So whenever you're working with garlic, it's to your advantage, if you want to bring out the flavor, to crush it up as much as possible. Now we've got our nice sea salt, black pepper, and garlic kind of paste going on. I'm gonna start heating up this pan because cast iron takes a little longer to heat up than other things. So I want to get it going. And then I'm gonna drain my beans. So ideally, it's great to soak your beans for at least 10 to 12 hours in order to improve the digestibility, to make them cook more quickly. I did not have that luxury today, so I did what's known as a quick soak. And with a quick soak, you take your beans, you put it in a pot, you cover them with cold water by about 2 or 3 inches, you bring it to a boil, and then you turn off the heat after about 2 or 3 minutes, and you just let them sit in the liquid. And that achieves basically the same thing that soaking. It's not the exact same, but it's similar enough, and it'll cut your cooking time down considerably. So you let them soak for about an hour, then you drain them and you proceed with your recipe. These beans, particularly kidney beans and I believe maybe navy beans, I forgot the other bean, but I was reading online that they in particular, besides having the typical phytic acid that's present in all legumes, nuts, beans, seeds, they also have something called oligosaccharides, which are really complex sugars that humans basically can't digest without without outside help. So to help with that, I'm going to be cooking this dish, with some kombu, which is in the seaweed family. It's a type of seaweed. It's called kelp. You can get it at Japanese stores, any sort of Asian market. I like to use that when I'm cooking my beans because it helps to soften them, it improves their digestibility, and it speeds up the cooking process. But again, particularly kidney beans, and I think it's navy beans, they have those oligosaccharides that are really difficult for humans to digest and can lead to upset stomachs and loud nights if you don't break them down appropriately. So kelp contains the enzymes that are necessary to break down these oligosaccharides so that your tummy is not rumbling later. And it doesn't have to be a huge piece of kelp. Like this is the kelp that I got. It comes in these big sheets. So you just open it and you're gonna take a sheet and just cut maybe like a, I don't know, 3 or 4 inch strip. I usually just break it off because it's pretty hard. So take it out from the package if I can. It's a little difficult, but I got it. All right, and then I just kind of like bend it a little. Got a little strip, good to go. And besides also helping to improve the digestibility of beans, kombu is a really excellent source of a lot of minerals that they're only found in the ocean, so we don't get them from land food. So lots of minerals that are missing from most of our diets can be found in this. And it doesn't really add any flavor to the beans. So it's not like you're gonna have seaweed tasting beans. Like it's a very neutral, mild flavor, but you're getting all the benefits of it, all the minerals, improving the digestibility of the beans. So I highly recommend kombu. And that package at the store was $3, and it lasts me a very long time because I just use small pieces. The next thing I wanted to talk about, which I'm pretty excited about today, is we're cooking with lard. Traditionally, red beans and rice is cooked with bacon grease or lard because that's what we do a lot of cooking with in the South. And I have this wonderful lard that I got from my butcher. It's from pastured meat. So one really special thing about lard when it's from pasture-raised animals, pasture-raised pigs, is it's full of vitamin D, which is missing. A lot of us are very deficient in vitamin D. You get vitamin D from pasture-raised organ meats, lard. Having sunshine helps you to utilize vitamin D, so it's important to have sunshine, which as New Yorkers, especially in the winter months, a lot of us are lacking. So yeah, vitamin D, get it from lard. It's really excellent. And contrary to what we've been taught for so long, lard is not unhealthy for you. It's a really, really healthy fat to cook with, especially, again, if it's from pastured meat. If it's not from pastured meat, it's still great to cook with, but you just want to limit it because if it's from factory farmed cattle, or not cattle rather, from factory farmed pigs, their diet is different. So not only is it not as high in vitamin D, but it's also higher in omega-6 fatty acids, which most of us have too much of. So when it's pastured, it's full of omega-6s, but also omega-3s, which help to balance out the ratio. All right, get it in the pot. So, starting to sizzle away. Get that nice and melty. Smoking a bit, which is fine. Smells like bacon cooking, actually, or kind of like a pork chop cooking. I'm also going to add a tiny bit of olive oil just because I'm obsessed with olive oil. So I like to have both fats in my cooking. So there's a little olive oil in there too, just to mix it up a little. So we got our fat nice and melty. Let's put in our garlic. Get that working away. One of my favorite sounds and smells, unequivocally, is the sound and smell of garlic. When you first put it in the pan and it's being sauteed, I just love it. Can't get enough of it. So we got that going. Add our onions in. Give this a nice stir. All right. Now for the rest of our trinity, let's put in our celery. Last but not least, our green bell pepper. I'm gonna let these guys go for a second. And traditionally Mondays, it's traditionally served on Mondays, but the reason is that on Mondays that was laundry day, it was wash day, and before modern times where we had, washer and dryer, all these poor women would be scrubbing the household clothes and, rags by hand. So it took up a big chunk of their day, needless to say. So the solution was red beans and rice, because they could get the beans going on the stove and, you know, leave them and go do all the laundry for the day and then come back and have dinner on the table. So that's why it's traditionally eaten on Mondays, which is interesting. And another cool fact I learned was that Louis Armstrong loved red beans and rice, and he loved them so much that sometimes he would sign or end letters saying red beans and ricely yours, Louis Armstrong. So I thought that was pretty cute. Add our sausage. This is going to be really hearty. I don't even know if this pot's going to be big enough. We'll make it work. Got our nice sturdy cast iron. We're ready to rock. So, I mean, you don't have to cook these sausage totally through, because they're going to be boiling with these beans for quite some time. You just want it to, so that they start to release some of their flavor. You know, they get a little color is ideal. But that would probably be easier for me to achieve if I had more surface area in the pan to work with. It's pretty full right now, so I don't know that they're going to start to become golden brown per se, but that's neither here nor there. Let's add our beans. So I got my drained beans, just going to add them right in. Lovely mixture so far. Let's do this. Let's go ahead and add our Cajun seasoning as well. Just gonna add a few fingers full. I would say, I'm really bad at guesstimating, but I would guesstimate that I just added probably just over a tablespoon of Cajun seasoning to this. So this, being that we've done the quick soak and the beans were already partially, you know, cooked a little bit, this shouldn't take too much longer. I mean, depending on your schedule and how much time you have, if you want, you can forego the soaking and just start the beans early in the morning and let them cook for most of the day. Or, you know, you can like have your beans soaked and ready so that when you get home from work, you just go and, you know, chop your veggies. You can even have all this stuff done the night before. I mean, nothing's going to happen to the veggies. They're not going to go anywhere if you cut them the night before. So, I mean, if you have a hankering for this on your Monday after work, then try to think ahead and just before you go to work, have your veggies cut up so that when you come home, all you got to do is heat your pan, throw in your fat, and, you know, saute it up, and then an hour later you'll have red beans and rice. Next, we're going to do some easy peasy white rice. So now we're going to make our white rice to go with our red beans. I'm going to use basmati rice. That's just my rice of choice. You can use whatever white rice is, you know, is your favorite. I personally love basmati because I love how fragrant it is and I love the nice long grains. So, first step is definitely to wash the rice. This is a really important step that removes excess starch, so it ensures that you're not going to have like sticky or gluey rice. If you want sticky or gluey rice, then by all means don't rinse it. But I mean, you can already see, this is the first rinse, how white the water is. Like, this is all this starch. Now, the ratio for most rice is 2 to 1 water to rice. 2 water to 1 cup of rice. Basmati, it differs a little bit. Generally, basmati is 1.5 to 1. So for every cup of rice, you just want 1.5 cups of water. My mom always have too little water and to have to add than to have too much, especially when you're dealing with a rice that's flavored, because then you just have all this lovely flavored water that, you know, goes down the drain. So I'm going to start my water. Just going to add a little bit of salt to that. Add a squirt of olive oil, a generous squirt, and then I'm going to put my rice in. To a boil, kind of smooth it down a little bit. It's going to come back up to a boil and we're going to let it simmer until most of the water has evaporated. at which point we will turn it down super low and then cover it and let it steam cook the rest of the way. And that's basically it. I mean, white rice is pretty straightforward, but the main thing is just to make sure that you rinse it so that you don't have all of that excess starch left over. I turned off the heat because it was just ready to go. So we got our lovely red beans. See how it thickened up really nicely. Got that sausage in there looking really good. It's just nice and thick and stew-like. Just waiting to get in my belly. So I think we're ready to rock. Our white rice has been steaming nicely, and I think it should be good to go. We can lift off the top and see that nice steam pouring out of that beautiful basmati rice. We've got our red beans, which are fully done, and they're just steaming away. The great thing about cooking with these cast iron pots is that it's retained so much of the heat that like it's still kind of cooking even though there's no heat. Like it was still bubbling for a good minute after I turned off the fire just because the pot had so much heat contained. So this looks nice and thick. The one thing I'm gonna add, I didn't really salt it because I usually like to salt my beans at the end. I've heard that it can make them tough, so I usually like to wait till the end when my beans are done and then salt it. And especially with this dish, I think it's important to salt at the end because you are cooking with sausage which already has salt in it. So you don't have to add a ton. Like I added a little bit of salt earlier in my garlic mixture just to, help break down the garlic. But you don't want to add too much because this andouille sausage has plenty of salt on its own. So we're going to still keep this nice and healthy. Again, in the grand tradition of my grandmother, I will not be taking rice from the middle. We'll take it only from the side. She was also a really big stickler about getting rice with like a dirty spoon. So as you see, this has beans on it. She wouldn't have enjoyed it if I took white rice with that dirty spoon. So, got our lovely steamed white rice. Now let's put some of this saucy goodness on it. Look at that hearty meal. Jeez Louise. This is going to get us through the winter. These New York winters, they call for hearty dishes that stick to your ribs, and this will probably stick to more than just your ribs. Alright, so we got that. Garnish with a little bit of parsley for some nice color. And that's that. We got our red beans and rice, New Orleans style rice. So this has been the Brothers Chambers Show. I'm Natalie, and thank you for getting saucy with me.